here we go. New book, new music, same low-effort intro. Let's have some fun. Of course, we'll begin with the Ninja no Chigiri. I am Ninja. My parents are the heaven and the earth. My home is my body. My power is loyalty. My magic is training. My life and my death is breathing. My body is control. My eyes are the sun and the moon. My ears are sensitivity. My laws are self-protection. My strength is adaptability. My ambition is taking every opportunity with fullness. My friend is my mind. My enemy is carelessness. My protection is right action. My weapons are everything that exists. My strategy is one foot in front of the other. My trust is in Quan. My way is the way of the tiger. Hello everybody, I'm Raphael Perry and it's time for some more Way of the Tiger. Left it a little while, didn't I? Let's get back in. But before we do, I want to talk about an encounter that I remember in strong association with this book, either from this book or maybe book 4, or something I might have been playing around the same time, possibly a Lone Wolf book. But I'm pretty sure it was a Way of the Tiger book. It's an encounter that I've been on the lookout for. It's a non-encounter, basically, right? It's just a little piece of description. But it sets the scene so brilliantly. Last night, I began to wonder if it was in the Way of the Tiger series at all, because I've been looking for it all this book and trying not to miss it. And this feels like where it should be. But in case it's not here, then I want to just describe it now and ask if any of you recognize it and know which book it's from. Don't tell me how to find it in that book, or just if you recognize it as being from this book, let me know in the comments section. If you recognize it as being from another book, also let me know in the comments section, right? So the hero is in a city, a new city. They are visiting for the first time, and they're trying to be sneaky, keep a low profile, pretty much like the main character in the Way of the Tiger series. They're in a sort of merchant's quarter. You're in a sort of merchant's quarter, and you see a girl selling flowers, right? A flower girl. And the flower girl goes from shop to shop down the road, and at every shop, the merchants who own those shops buy some flowers from her and prominently display those flowers, be it in the window, near the door, somewhere obvious, right? And they throw out yesterday's flowers. And the merchants who can't afford flowers because they haven't done well enough to earn enough money yesterday for flowers, not that the flowers are very expensive, are very upset, scared, worried, begin to cry. And the hero, that's you, works out that this is a protection racket. They aren't buying her flowers because she's nice. They aren't buying her flowers because they're pretty. They buy her flowers because the shops who have paid for flowers don't get robbed by the Thieves Guild tonight. and the shops who don't buy flowers get absolutely burgled, smashed up, robbed, vandalized by the Thieves Guild tonight. And every day they have to buy the flowers. Because the Thieves Guild have worked out that that's enough money for them if enough people pay. And all the merchants have worked out that it's cheaper than getting burgled every night. So I am looking forward to finding the flower girl encounter. You don't get to talk her or anything. But I do remember that encounter vividly from around the time I first played this book many years ago. So it's not something really new, right? But I do remember that not only was it a fun, beautiful, intelligent piece of writing and a really creative idea, but that it also meant you were on the correct path, and if you missed that encounter, you were going to fail and not complete the book. So I've been on the lookout for this one here, and hopefully we'll find it soon. In case it's not in this book, and in case any of you recognize that encounter, and I'm literally going to call this episode Where is the Flower Girl, right? Let me know. Just tell me in the comments section which book she's in, right? I don't need to know massively greater detail than that, but I'd like to see that encounter again at some point. It might not have been required for success. If it was a lone wolf book, it would almost definitely not be required for success, because you'd have multiple paths that would lead to victory. But I'd still like to see it again all the same. So if you know where the flower girl is hiding, do let me know, because, you know, last night I began to feel maybe she's in Talisman of Death, because that's by the same authors, right? And I did a trial and error speed run through Talisman of Death, through pretty much every section of the entire city, could not find the flower girl. So I'm pretty sure she's not in there. Again, a fun minor encounter. Let's start at the top of this section again, where we left off last time, and sorry for the diversion at the beginning. Once inside the city, you decide to seek the safety of the Temple of Quan, but the street that leads from the gate runs only 50 yards before opening out onto a large green, rutted with the wheels of carts. Oxen teams are being led away from the wagons of a merchant caravan, and one corner of the green is occupied with the gaudily coloured pavilions of merchants and their agents. One or two smaller tents boast the names of clairvoyants and soothsayers. Two large streets run on from the green, one to the north towards some imposing and grandiose buildings, the other to the east towards a park. You dare not ask the way for fear of giving yourself away as a stranger. We could go north, east, or dally outside one of the soothsayers' booths, possibly hoping to overhear something. Okay, Fighting Fantasy rule would say north in this case, unless you have something better to do. So let's tarry a while. Let's stay a while and listen. Yeah, that was a 0 seconds preparation. Hang on. Stay a while and listen. That's better. Of course, they tried to make him sound less like Sean Connery in the sequels, which I think was a shame, to be honest. You step across the rutted green towards a booth decked out in scarlet and blue, which boasts the name Lucretia, enchantress and seer of the south, knower of secrets unknown. You duck under an awning into a gloomy tent lined with worn tapestries depicting an artisan's imagining of the Garden of the Gods. Quan the Redeemer is given prominent place between Eo and Avatar. The woman, hunched over an enormous crystal ball, has a face so wrinkled and folded you wonder that she can see out of it. But then you reflect perhaps she has no need of vision as you know it. She does not look up, but asks you to sit on a worn velvet-coloured stool. Time waits for no one. No one should wait for time, she says mysteriously, then in an altogether different voice. Cross my palm with gold, then. If you have a piece of gold or a ruby and wish to give it to her, or otherwise, you could choose not to. We have no rubies. We have 10 gold pieces. We can part with one of those. And I'm doing that because Quan the Redeemer is given a prominent position in her artwork. She takes the payment and then caresses the crystal ball. This sphere of foretelling links me to the Oracle of Oracles, Terengedion. I see you are a traveller from afar, but you have never travelled to Terengedion near the jungle of Kesh. I see much. You come from beyond the endless sea, but your future is uncertain, stranger. Violence surrounds you. You have the look of death. She stiffens, then crouches even lower over the great glass orb, but you can see nothing within it. I cannot foretell your future. Your destiny hangs in the balance. She places a dark cloth over the crystal ball. Fortune-tellers never tell their clients of their own imminent death, you muse, but you are, in a way, grateful for the uncertainty. At least tell me which road I shall take from this green, you demand. Your way lies east, she replies. You experience a chill of morbid superstition and decide to leave. We could head north towards the grandiose buildings or east towards the park. Well, we paid for her advice, so we might as well take it. We have never travelled to Terengedion, near the jungle of Kesh. This implies we might have done, or there may be questions about Terengedion and Kesh later on. I'm going to just note that down. Oh, time. Time waits for no man. No man should wait for time. May be important. So east it is. The thing is, I believe that being a morning encounter, I think we're in the evening now that we've arrived at the city. So perhaps the next day. Ooh. Traitors. The main street leading east is called the Edgeway. It leads past the houses of well-to-do people towards the park, which is surrounded by railings and with 2 huge iron gates. A grisly sight meets your eye. In the flickering torches you see the bodies of a woman and a man who have been whipped and then broken on the wheel. Their hands and feet have been stretched wide and roped to the edges of the huge wheel, which might once have carried a catapult. She was evidently a shield maiden, he unmistakably a monk of Quan. Placards are nailed on the tree trunks to which the wheels are fixed, bearing the words, "Traitors." It seems they have died for opposing the Usurper. You walk past the bloodied body into the park. A glow of many torches lights up a cloistered monastery adjoining the great church to Quan the Redeemer. We will doubtless be able to find help from the monks of Quan, but also then possibly the shield maidens of Dharma. This is a clue that should not be overlooked. You walk to the monastery gate, where a monk greets you and you tell him who you are. A glimpse at your birthmark is enough to convince him that you are the Avenger, and he leads you to meet the High Grandmaster, who is at prayer in a small private chapel. Interesting that the Usurper has not yet cast out, or driven out, rather, this temple. The High Grandmaster is an old man. His watery eyes hold wisdom, but he has lost the strength of his body. You show him your father's seal, the hippogriff on the checkerboard, and the birthmark. He hails you as a deliverer from the evil tyranny of the Usurper. It is plain that he feels his own weakness and inability to oppose the despot keenly. You talk far into the night, and he tells you how things stand on the city of Irsmuncast nigh edge. Since your father, the Lawmaster's death, the cruel Usurper has tyrannized the people, killing all who oppose him, and grinding the spirit of the peasants underfoot. The farmers have had their land taken away from them. Now they are bond slaves, tied to the land, forced to give a half of everything they grow to feed the Usurper's army of orcs and half-orcs. To be married, couples must gain a permit from the Usurper's Lord Steward. Worshippers of Avatar and Quan are often refused this, and so cannot have legitimate children. Bastards can never inherit. Crippling taxes have been imposed on all, save those who worship Nemesis. This means that people are forced to renounce their belief and turn to evil if they are to be anything but miserably poor. The priests of Nemesis and the Usurper's army rule with naked swords, but they cannot close the temples. "The temple tax is high," says the Grandmaster. "We cannot pay our due, but even the Usurper cannot cast us out. We have no power but that over people's minds." You explain that you have come to take your rightful throne, and he pledges the support of the temple, but says that it will not be enough to kill the tyrant. There must be a revolution to overturn the army and the priests of Nemesis. The martial arts tradition of the Temple of Quan is not strong, so you will have to seek support for the revolution elsewhere before you slay the Usurper. Just a few pages back, in fact. Here we go. The High Grandmaster tells you that what power still remains in the city, apart from that of the Usurper and the Temple of Nemesis, is divided into 4 groups. There are 4 large temples in the city, to Nemesis, Quan, Dharma, the Shield Maiden of the Gods, and Time. Of these, the Temple of Time is not subject to a temple tax, and its priests and their followers enjoy special privileges under the Usurper's rule. Perhaps they are keeping the Usurper young, keeping him in power on the throne. You ask why this is, and the High Grandmaster tells you that according to the sages of Grey Guilds, Time is the most powerful of all the gods. Yes, perhaps they just manipulate the time when they have to pay. It's like, who's going to keep track of when they pay their taxes and when they don't? The Snow Father has more temples and worshippers dedicated to him than any other. Good and evil mean nothing to Time. Indeed, it would take me a year to tell you what the worship of Time entails, but the Usurper does not see his priests as a threat, even though people are turning to Time to escape the heavy taxes. However, the priests of Time are not allied to the Usurper. Next in power are the merchants, led by Golspiel of the Silver Tongue. They have mercenaries at their backs and beck and call and can afford to pay the Usurper's taxes. Merchants always know a great deal about the underworld and power struggles in any city. Third comes the Temple of Dharma, Shield Maiden of the Gods. Under your father's rule they were the city watch and gate guards. They kept law and order. The followers of Dharma are valiant fighters, but they are outnumbered by the Usurper's army. Lastly, the rabble, the dispossessed, the bond slaves, and any who have the Usurper to thank for their wretched plight. More than half the city, but without a leader to unite them, they are nothing. With a leader... The Grandmaster spreads his hands. You thank him, and he invites you to pray with him on the morrow. Until then... Obvious scanning error. Until then, you will sleep safe, perhaps, for this one night. The monks of the temple heal your wounds if you have any. You may restore your endurance to 20. And that is a... Oh, it already is. Look at that now, that's great. At prayer in the small chapel, you bare your soul to Quan the Redeemer and pray for his guidance. After a while you sense that he is with you and your spirit is uplifted. You regain up to 3 points of inner force if you have used any. That is great. We return back up to 4 points of inner force. This means we're likely to need it, but also that we may have used quite a lot already and we are replenishing resources that are used. It's a nice way of balancing the adventure and extending the difficulty in the challenge. Your prayer for guidance brings one cryptic message. Trust your heart. Fortunately, we have the skill of Shinren. We can really trust our heart, although that might not be what it means. After the service, you consult once more with the High Grandmaster. In the cold light of day, he is racked with doubt. He fears that you may bring disaster to the temple, but he says he will still support you and gives you a map of the city. He asks you to come and go in disguise, to which you gladly agree. You tell him that you intend to go among the people to learn their mood and to find out if it is possible to spark off a successful revolution, and this calms him. You assume the disguise of a bond serf, homespun breeches and jacket. At dusk, you walk past the 2 broken bodies on their wheels and head back into the city itself in search of one of the 3 largest inns. Will you visit first the Cleansing Flame, the Hostel from the Edge, or the River of Beasts? Well, first off, this is a map. So I'm noting this section so we can return to it. Now, the inns are not on the map. Okay. Now, one of the things that the French guys did when they did the full colour versions of the books was a beautiful full-page illustrated full-colour map of the city of Irsmuncast with much more detail than this. It's really nice. I'm not sure there's a digital version I can show you. Well, I might take a photograph at some point, slip it into one of the episodes, go, hey, look, picture of a map here, you know. So, Cleansing Flame could be something positive to do with Dharma or negative to do with Nemesis. Wait, isn't one of the 3 evil gods something to do with the something flame? The Hostel from the Edge or the River of Beasts? So we have no idea. Cleansing sounds like purity. People might be a little more zealous there. Hostel from the Edge. The Edgeway is down here. The River of Beasts? No idea. Where all the animals... sounds like a pretty lowly watering hole where like cattle go to drink or something. Let's go to the Inn of the Cleansing Flame. The sign showing a single violet flame hangs in a narrow thoroughfare called Iskra Street. You walk up wide stairs into a large club room with a spinet at one end. It could be used for dancing, but a great many soldiers, priests and priestesses lounge on divans, drinking wine. The serving wenches are polite and dressed in uniforms of black velvet and silver satin. There is absolute silence, and all heads turn as you walk in. You could hear a sparrow breathing. Without exception, the priests and priestesses sport the whirlpool symbol and most wear black. So, reverencers of Nemesis or Vile. Either way, not good. They are all human. If you decide you have made a mistake in coming here and leave, that might be a really good idea, but it might be a bit obvious if they just see us walk out. We could pluck up the courage to sit alone at a low chess table. Sure, let's do that. It's fairly calm and unassuming. If you have a yellow china flower, we do not have a yellow china flower. You wend your way between the debauched-looking customers to a low chess table and pretend to study a chess problem for a while. You have not been there long, and conversation has started again, when a young man in a grey doublet and hose sits opposite you, pours 2 glasses of wine, and offers to give you a game. Seeing this as an ideal opportunity to get to know someone who is not a peasant, you agree readily. He gives you white, but you nevertheless play an uncharacteristically defensive pawn formation. Interesting that the author assumes that white should play aggressively in the early game, right? So, a lot of people see white going first as an advantage in chess. But then black gets to go second. Black sees what white has done, whereas white has to act. So white has the whole board, everything's set, default, nothing has changed. White makes one move, boom, right? Whatever it is. Here I am acting, I am taking a decisive action. Things have now changed. Now the board has changed, right? Then black gets to take one move. But after they've each taken 3 or 4 moves, that one turn advantage is nothing. And the game is in flow. The Shield Maiden's Reserve, comments your opponent. You are not by any chance a reverencer of Dharma. You shake your head innocently, and a woman with plucked eyebrows and eye coal on an adjoining chaise lounge laughs and says, "Thank the Dark Lord for that. Their prowess with the swords is already too much, without their beating us at the game of chess as well." Some of the soldiers howl at her, but she waves her black lace fan at them. Why then can you not stop them drilling and parading as if it were they who rule the city? This provokes a hostile outcry, but the woman ignores it and attempts to hide herself in your game. Your opponent introduces himself as Radziwill, and the woman as Electra. They talk quietly for a time, not excluding you, of the bad feeling that exists for the usurper within the city. At length Radziwill turns to you and says, "What do you think Irsmuncast could do with a new ruler? We could agree quietly but heartily and say that we know a possible candidate. Or say that Irsmuncast seems to be a fair and fine city." Right. This bar is full of soldiers who work for the usurper. And priests of Nemesis who are highly favoured by the usurper. If any of them were to overhear us saying these things, it would probably not go well for us. Radziwill seems to be, maybe the right person to speak to. Electra is dismissive of the soldiers who laugh and jeer at her comments. And she is still saying, oh, these good people, why do we have to deal with them? So maybe while it's possible these two could be luring us into a separate conversation, it's still got a pretty heavy audience, so we're not going to agree openly in such an environment. It would be foolish to do so. So we shall say, Irsmuncast seems to be a fine and a fair and fine city. It's a great place. Radziwill says, but don't you think things should change? You look blankly at him, and he falls to thinking about his next move. Electra watches you through lowered eyelids. You pay the price for your conservative opening. Radziwill is a skilled player, and your thoughts are distracted. You're lucky to gain a draw. Will you say goodbye now and leave? Same option as we had to leave earlier, so perhaps what we do here won't affect us when we're leaving, if we get to leave. Or change your mind and quietly say that you believe the tyranny of the usurper must be overthrown at any cost. I believe that's the same section to turn to, and that's a different thing to say. I think we get the hell out of here. This is too dangerous. We're playing a very dangerous game, and I don't just mean chess. If we are followed by enemies, then so be it. Back in the street once more, you consider where to go. If you have already visited the 3 largest inns tonight, or do not wish to visit another, you could return to the Temple of Quan. If not, you may visit the Cleansing Flame if you have not already done so. Same section number. The Hostel from the Edge, or the River of Beasts. Let's go Hostel from the Edge, as it should be near the edge of the city, out of the way a bit, not attracting too much attention, right? They might be... People might feel braver there to talk of such things. Then again, the River of Beasts is probably where the common folk reside. So they may feel like hard put upon, and they might not be as heavily policed because there's so many of them. You walk down dark side streets until you catch sight of the door to the inn on the east side of the city. A sign written above the door... A sign written board above the door reads, "The Hostel from the Edge." Inside is a huge low vault filled with nigh on 200 souls, less than half of whom are human. The non-humans are orcs, half-orcs, and a group of dangerous-looking wolfen, erect and arrogant-looking. They have the heads of wolves and the bodies of beast-men, but they stand over 7 feet tall. Peasant girls are carrying tankards to the customers seated at low tables and benches, and a lame tramp lolls against the wall near the door. We could turn and leave straight away. This does look like a dangerous place. If we stay and have a yellow china flower, something may happen. We do not have a yellow china flower. So we decide to sit ourselves on a bench next to some unshaven-looking men who appear to be drinking heavily. If they get drunk, they might open up a little bit. And I think I just saw one of those wolfmen in an illustration there on the page. You buy a tankard of ale with a silver coin, which you pick up in the park and sit down next to the young men. Although drunk, they are not slow, but you gather they are not altogether happy with their lot, nor are they alone. Feelings are running high against the usurper because he favours a few at the expense of others and seeks to turn friends against each other. They are soon talking to you, and one points out the tramp by the door, saying, "There are several like him. They are the usurper's secret informers. If he comes this way, talk about the weather." You're still unsure what their reaction to the possibility of revolution might be, so you rack your brains for a way to find out who might make good allies. Will you say that you have come to Irsmuncast to marry, and ask if it is easy to get permission from the Lord High Steward? Or ask how it is the merchants' emporia still look prosperous under the tyrant's rule? Well, we know from the Temple of Quan that the merchants are making enough money to afford to pay the taxes, which might mean that, might mean that we have an answer to this question already. So let's ask about Because the other thing is, if we've come to town to try and seek permission to marry, to get like a marriage certificate, or however it's handled, we don't need to have brought our young lady love with us, right? And it doesn't need to be someone in the city we marry. We could have someone in a village back home we want to go for. And it's fairly innocuous and a fairly normal thing. So let's go with that. That depends, says one of the young men. That depends, says one of the young men, on whether you worship at the Temple of Nemesis. Or the Temple of Time, puts in another. Oh yes, or Time, agrees the first. Why Time, you ask? Everyone knows the priests of Time don't care an hour candle as to who rules the city as long as they are left alone to pursue their strange devotions. They are powerful to be sure, but did they do anything when the Lawmaster was murdered by that monk? No. No, they were probably waiting for us to grow up. As the conversation goes on, you see how the Temple of Time enjoys great privileges in return for not opposing the usurper. One of the men rolls dead drunk under the bench, and they haul him to his feet and leave. You decide to do the same as the tramp sidles towards the emptying bench. Yeah, let's move before the spy approaches. Let us get out of here. Might as well go to the River of Beasts to see what that's all about. 62. Yeah. The inn called the River of Beasts is on a crooked line of flagstones called Isvestia Street. Sounds a bit like investment, and I don't mean like investing money in something. I mean like the investment of a monarch, right? The sign outside it shows a sea serpent and grotesque snake-like horses and frogs frolicking in a frothing blue river. Is that a premonition for Book 4, perhaps? Inside, you walk past 2 armed guards into a number of small rooms, each served by bars in which more than 200 people are drinking and talking. The air is heavy with smoke, and this is the first time that you have seen the common people of Irsmuncast appearing to enjoy themselves. You soon realize that you are being watched by the barman, so you sit quietly in a corner. A young serving boy gives you a drink by mistake and then gets cuffed round the head for his error by a hearty-looking red-bearded fellow. You offer him the stirrup cup, but he motions for you to keep it, so you drink slowly and keep your eyes open. Glad we came here first, in case being drunk may have affected us at the other locations, although they didn't see any questions about if we'd been to River Beast first. Although perhaps this is where we get the yellow china flower. It soon becomes obvious that the people speak openly here about their hatred of the usurper, and you ask Redbeard about the people's feelings. All that he tells you convinces you that given a leader, someone to fight for, the rabble could rise up and throw off the yoke of tyranny, if they had the power to do so. At least half of the able-bodied populace appears to have a burning grievance against the usurper, and, in recent riots, the soldiers, mainly orcs, had to kill many of them to quell their revolutionary ardour. You say nothing of your own right to the throne, but ask why they have no leaders. Redbeard tells you that they have a leader, the demagogue, but that while he is a fine mob orator, no one would fight for him. He is hardly a dashing warrior. You ask him who he would like to ally himself with, the merchants, the priests of Time, or the swordswomen of Dharma, but he replies that the commoners need no allies. At length you decide to leave, much heartened by your talk with Redbeard and his friends. Let us return now to the Temple of Quan. We have investigated all 3 local taverns. The night is probably quite late. It's time to go back to safety and maybe get some sleep. As you walk back to the green, you see a family screaming in terror as they are dragged from their home by orcish soldiers. Their neighbours pelt the soldiers with bricks, and they take the poor people away. The crows fly up from the now hideously disfigured bodies, stretched and broken on the wheels by the park gates. The High Grandmaster meets you inside the temple, and you tell him that you are firm in your resolve to depose the Usurper. The Grandmaster seems more optimistic, and he tells you that a soothsayer whose predictions often come to pass has left a message for you. You must enter the dungeons below the palace. There you will find something that will aid you to kill the Usurper inside the tomb of the long-dead overlord, Telmain III. Let's write that down. You spend the next day pondering how to drum up support for the struggle. Which faction will you try to speak to first? The Temple of Time? The swordswomen of Dharma, shield maiden of the gods? The merchants in the Emporia? Or perhaps try to kindle the rabble? The soothsayer told us, and we wouldn't have known this if we didn't go into a tent, time waits for no man should wait for time. So we shall go to the Temple of Time first. If we go there later, it might be too late in the day, and they might appreciate prompt timekeeping, or everything done in its correct order. So let us go there. You tell the High Grandmaster that you intend to approach the Priests of Time, and he says that he will arrange for a meeting between you and the heads of their temple. Later that day you walk down a wide road called the Avenue of Seasons towards a large temple which seems to consist of a single silver dome, rising like a flower bulb into a tall spire which acts as a sundial on the wider square to the south of the temple. The symbols of a budding shoot, an open flower, a yellow leaf, and a pile of dust dominate the temple front. Above the gates are the words, Time, the Snow Father, eldest father, youngest son, from whose touch none is immune, without whom we would neither be nor die. You give a password at the temple gates, and are ushered into a sunny conservatory by a scribe. A grey statue of an aged but wise man with his hands on the shoulders of a very young but precocious-looking boy dominates the sunny room. A side door opens and 3 priests enter, each in his way resembling the old man of the statue, each clad in grey robes with white belts. As you look into their rheumy eyes, you feel that it would be difficult to lie to them. Taking the bit between your teeth, you show them your father's hippogriff seal and tell them who you are. They seem to believe you, and one of them remarks that your father was a wise man who did much to help the poor, so you reply that with your help you will do the same, if only the usurper's forces can be beaten. You ask them what power they might wield if it came to the revolution. We may look old to you, young warrior, and indeed we are, even by the reckoning of the very old, but we are steeped in the thaumaturgical arts, says the tallest of the 3, and he speaks every word another word which you do not catch. Suddenly you are alone in the conservatory. Seconds later, the side door opens again, and the same 3 priests file in. The sense of déjà vu is overwhelming. The one who spoke points out of the window. The sun is low in the sky, and the shadow cast by the temple's spire and the courtyard sundial shows that 2 hours have passed in what seemed to you an instant. These priests can actually stop time. This is powerful magic. Indeed, they could have killed you without your knowing. Even a child could have. You find yourself gushing praise, quite overwhelmed with what is happening. Then, checking yourself, you ask if you can count on the temple's support. The same priest who cast the spell says, Yes, young one, you can. You tell them that the lowering of the usurper's flag will mean that you have killed him, and that this is the signal for them to act. You assure them that they will not lose any privileges under your rule. If you are satisfied, you may leave the temple, return to the temple to Quan, and arrange with the High Grandmaster to approach a faction who you have not yet spoken to for support. Either the swordswomen of Dharma, shield maidens of gods, the merchants in their emporia. Or you may try to kindle a rebel. If you feel you have all the support you need, you make your final preparations to assassinate the usurper. If you wish to press the Free Priests as to what they will actually do when the flag comes down, perhaps we should do that. We are a religious individual and we are interested. They're not going to be able to explain everything fully, but let's ask. Let's ask anyway and see what they have to say on the matter. When you ask the priests questions concerning the disposition of troops and the timing for their attack, they reply that they are experts in timing. "Are you sure the time is right?" asks one. You reply that feelings run high in the city and that you think this is the time. They nod and indicate, smiling, that they know enough about revolutions to decide for themselves. "All things come to pass given time," says one. Suddenly the conservatory is empty once more, and the scribe appears and shows you out. The sun's shadow has moved another hour. We'd better approach another faction. Let's go visit the swordswomen of Dharma. They we can probably rely upon. You tell the High Grandmaster that you intend to approach the swordswomen of Dharma, and he tells you a little about them. Their belief is in law and order, and they believe that only through discipline and the taming of the havoc-wreaking elements will Life on Orb realize its full potential. They do not see good as being in itself preferable to evil, though they are by no means evil. So they're lawful neutral. He sends a messenger to tell the Force Lady Gwyneth that you are on your way to see her. Soon you are in Cross Street, slipping into the large church of grey stone, which looks like a fort, and are led by two swordswomen up the main stairs to the top tier of the keep. One of the women knocks on the door, and a strong voice says, "Enter!" You're ushered in and come face to face with Force Lady Gwyneth. She has a determined look, hands calloused from swordsplay, and short, spiky iron-grey hair. She looks at ease in well-worn armour. You tell her who you are, and show her your father's hippogriff seal and, when she asks, your birthmark. She asks you about your life, and you tell her, dwelling on your enmity with Honoric and the Legion of the Sword of Doom. When you tell her that you are going to kill the Usurper and lead a revolution, she merely nods. Will you say that you value the trusted swords arms of her soldiers and ask her to fight against a rule whose end result will be chaos? Or say that with her soldiers victory is assured and that you will make her General-in-Chief of the forces of Irsmuncast when you are our overlord? Let's not make promises we can't keep. I don't think the Shield Maidens of Dharma would appreciate that. She will appreciate our emphasizing the chaotic rule of the Overlord. So let's go with that option. This must be the following our heart that we have been advised about. There is no flicker of emotion on Gwyneth's face as she asks you what the fate of the Temple of Dharma would be under your overlordship. You can't tell how interested she is, but she may be considering throwing her forces behind you. If you have some rubies, a potion of healing, or a magical rune-carved dagger, you may offer it to her and say that this is but a small token by comparison with the rewards which will be hers. We have no rubies. We have no healing potion. We have no magical rune-carved dagger. And this honestly feels like a bribe. Alternatively, so we don't have this thing, whatever that might do for us. Alternatively, you may simply state that you will restore those customs and laws with which your father governed. In other words, the fairness and lawful approach that she would approve of anyway. Gwyneth nods and says that you can count on the support of the Temple of Dharma and 2,000 trained sword arms. That number might be important. So, Temple of Time, Sword Maidens of Dharma, 2,000. You tell her that you will kill the usurper yourself, then lower his flag on the palace, which will be the signal for her to attack the usurper's soldiers. You spend some time talking battle tactics. The usurper has 5,000 men and orcs, but not all would remain loyal. She is clearly a gifted general, and she despises the usurper with all her heart. You leave the temple in good spirits, fingering a small statue of the goddess Dharma, which she has given you as a token of her support. Note it on your character sheet. There we go. We could return to the Temple of Quan and ask Grandmaster for help us approach a faction. Go to the Temple of Time. That looks like the same number we had earlier, so maybe we didn't need to go to the Temple of Time first. Wait, time waits for no man. Maybe we shouldn't have asked him for extra explanation? And because no man waits for time. Yeah, I don't know. Merchants in their emporia try to kindle rabble. Let's go see the merchants, who have lots of mercenaries, lots of money at their disposal. They will be interested in knowing how the city's... Ooh, there's a big fat blubber. Right. When you tell the High Grandmaster that you wish to enlist the support of the merchants, he says that he has no dealings with them, but that, if you go now, you will find their spokesman, Goldspiel of the Silver Tongue, at the Spice Emporium on Low End Road near the Green. He adds that the merchants keep a large number of mercenary soldiers in their pay. You're escorted from the Green by two evil-looking mercenaries in purple livery. Goldspiel has just completed the auction of some jewellery when you find him in his emporium, which is a great purple pavilion furnished with exotica from faraway lands. His eyes are like small shining currents in a face that shudders every time he moves. His fat jowls hang down like juleps. What's a julep? I know what a julep is, roughly. And his hands look like balloons. He smiles and asks in a smooth, persuasive voice, what your business is. You tell him straight away who you are. Probably not the best approach, especially if the guards are in the room. Showing him your father's hippogriff and checkerboard seal and your birthmark. He is sceptical at first, but something about you convinces him that your father was indeed the lawmaster. Then you tell him you're fated to overthrow the usurper and become overlord in his place. It seems a bit foolhardy. Asking for Goldspiel's support at the revolution. The merchant gives away nothing, but he begins to persuade you that you must lift all taxes on the traders when you are overlord, and suggests that all those desiring to become merchants should apply to him for a certificate allowing them to trade, a certificate they would no doubt have to pay quite handsomely for. It seems a bit lawless. I don't think the Shield Maidens of Dharma would appreciate of this. Will you tell him that you will give these concessions in trade for his support? Little bit early to be making those kind of decisions. Don't count your chickens before they hatch. Or say that you will give these things thought, but it is too soon to make such promises. Yeah, we'll go with that one. Okay, we've already been pretty brash at this meeting. Let's not be too hasty. A little bit of Treebeard in there. Goldspiel makes his displeasure evident, and you try to think of a way of smoothing things over. If you have some rubies, a healing potion, or a magical rune-carved dagger, you may offer to bribe him. Otherwise, you must resign yourself to the fact that you have failed to enlist the support of the merchants. Okay. So be it, I suppose. Goldspiel says that he will not intervene, but he gives you a jade lotus as a token of his esteem for your late father. Not a yellow china flower, but a jade lotus. There we go. He tells you he is due to meet one of the Usurper's captains, so you bow and take your leave. If you have the skill of Shinren, we absolutely do. Him meeting one of the Usurper's captains can't be good. The Grandmaster of the Dawn taught you a heart training so well that you can hear the duplicity even in the guileful Goldspiel's voice. You can be reasonably certain that he is going to betray you, and so you decide to tell him that you know of this, but will spare his life if he changes his mind. You can tell that he is impressed by your perspicacity and has decided not to betray you, and so you leave. But we still have the Jade Lotus, all the same. We could approach another faction. We can go try and kindle the rabble. The reason I've left the rabble till last is that they're going to be the least patient. They're going to get angry, they're going to want to act. And they're going to want to act quickly before they lose their, mind and go, are you taking this seriously? Are you even going to do this? Come on, why have we been waiting so long, right? So we need to get them going last, so they build up the momentum towards it all kicking off. When you tell the High Grandmaster of the Temple of Quan that you have decided to enlist the support of a rabble, he nods, but says that it will not be easy, so we're clearly returning back to the temple in between visits to factions, possibly even going to all of them on different days, which seems quite reasonable. He introduces you to the man they call the Demagogue, who calls on you at the Temple of Quan. He is a tall, emaciated man. His yellow robe flaps around legs no thicker than a sparrow's. His face is all nose, his lips narrow and twisted, but his eyes burn with a manic intensity. He seems nervous in the presence of the High Grandmaster, but he turns his unshifting gaze upon you and asks you to justify yourself. You tell him you would strive to rule as wisely as the Lawmaster your father, and be fair to all. After long discussion, the Demagogue warns you that he will need... The Demagogue warns that you will need to impress the rabble greatly if you are to whip them up into a frenzy and unite them behind you, but that he will work on them first. That evening he takes you to a great meeting hall behind the River of Beasts Inn, where hundreds of malcontents are waiting for a speech. Fortunately we came here earlier, so we have an idea what kind of inn that is. And there he is, all nose, thin lips, lank hair, chain round his neck. The crowd have assembled to hear the Demagogue seem... The crowd who have assembled to hear the Demagogue seem to be of two types of people. Some have the look of those who would live in a state of squalor no matter who reigned over them, coarse-looking and unwashed. Many more, dressed in torn and patched clothing, have the look of those who have seen better days. There is a tense and angry mood in the hall. When the Demagogue stands, he is mocked, but when he begins to speak, it is as if the rabble have fallen under a spell. He is a superb orator, and his words stir the crowd, until they are chanting, "Death to the Usurper!" Even you feel the injustices of these people, as if you too had suffered, and he describes their plight. "Who is it who has taken away your birthright?" "The Usurper!" shouts the crowd. "Who is it who denies you the chance to raise children?" "The Usurper!" "Who is it who has taken everything you ever had?" "The Usurper!" "And who will give these things back to you?" There is a muffled shout of, "The Usurper!" Then an uneasy silence settles over the crowd. "No one," says the Demagogue. "You must take what is yours by birthright." He continues until they are on their feet, shouting for the Usurper's death. "And here is your leader, the child of the Lawmaster, rightful overlord, Avenger!" You stand up to address the hysterical mob, a strange feeling of butterflies in your stomach. Will you tell them that you will restore their birthright, saying they have nothing to lose but their chains? Am I not a man and a brother? If you know, you know. If you don't, I'll fucking tell you in a moment. Or say that the usurper must be punished, and that, with their help, you will be the new overlord. If I say, look, I'm going to be the new overlord and rule over you, just like the last one, it's like, they're going to be like, whoa, hang on, overlord's pretty bad at the moment. Are you going to be the same? Yeah, it was the campaign against slavery. You have nothing to lose but your chains. Is it Brothers of the World Unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains, was a slogan used by the British campaign for slavery in the 1860s, the campaign against slavery. And it also often featured an image of a black man with the slogan, "Am I not a man and a brother?" And there's often a picture of the two hands clasped in prayer, you know, with the chains around the wrists. But yeah, Brothers of the World Unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains was so incredibly powerful. I think we should use it here. We will restore your birthright. You have nothing to lose but your chains. You have taken the mood of the crowd, and they are carried on with you. They have accepted you as the rightful heir and their new leader. When you sit down, they cheer you, and then the demagogue whips them into a frenzy of fervour. Suddenly there is a battering at the street door. The usurper's soldiers have arrived to disperse the mob. Scuffles and fighting break out, but the demagogue takes your hand, saying, "We must make a plan." He leads you out of the hall by a secret back door, and you tell him that you will assassinate the usurper and then pull down his flag on the palace as a signal for the mob to attack the palace, the barracks, and the temple of Nemesis. The demagogue says that you may leave the rest to him. He presses a coin showing the head of your father and marked Coronation Day into your hand. Coronation Day coin. There we go. If you wish to approach another faction with whom you have not yet spoken, will it be the priesthood of the Temple of Time? We've talked to all of them. So let's make our final preparations to assassinate the usurper. The dreaded Section 9 that we have been pointed towards so many times. Back at the Temple to Quan, you tell the High Grandmaster that you will make your attempt on the usurper's life tomorrow, when he will be sitting in judgment on more wrongly accused innocents in the throne room. The High Grandmaster tells you that the dungeon the soothsayer spoke of leads directly into the throne room, and you agree that it will provide an ideal route of attack against the unsuspecting usurper. The Grandmaster cautions you that men tell awful tales of horrors that lurk below the palace, but that he knows of a secret way into the dungeons. If you search out the tomb of the long-dead Lord Calmon in the cemetery and pull down on a torch bracket that lights his epitaph, a doorway will open into the tomb. He has another piece of help for you. One of the soothsayers from the Green has given him a message. It seems that the mausoleum of a former Lord of Irsmuncast holds a circlet which holds a potent magic against the usurper. Quite possibly Telmain III, or another one we should be looking for as well. You tell the High Grandmaster that the signal for the monks to attack will be the lowering of the usurper's flag on the palace. When all of your preparations are complete, you retire to meditate and then sleep. In the morning you walk alone towards the cemetery, dwelling on the High Grandmaster's last words. Farewell, and remember, Avenger, many before you have tried to kill the usurper and failed. May Quan guide you. And with that, I think I'm going to end the episode. And once again, we have managed to go an entire episode without having to roll any dice, which is quite impressive, but does not necessarily bode well for the session to come. Right, well, I'm going to leave this one here. Hope you've all enjoyed it. Sorry it took this long. We didn't see the Flower Girl anywhere, so if any of you remember where she is, please let me know just which books so that I can be on the lookout for her when I play it next. I don't need to know exactly how to get to her or anything, but that's okay. Alright, well, that worked out quite well. See you all next time, guys. And remember, if the Overlord's being nasty, Keir Starmer can fuck off. Just saying.